Meeting of the Monroe Township Board of Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
May we have a roll call, Mr. Gorski?
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Here.
Mr. Chiarella. Here. Ms. Antilles.
Here.
Mr. Braverman.
Here.
Mr. Kaufman. Here. Mr. Klein.
Here.
Mr. Leary.
Here.
Mr. Masters.
Here.
Mr. Tesler.
Here.
Mrs. Ferroni.
Here.
Madam Board President, you have a quorum.
Thank you. In accordance with the provisions of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law, the Monroe Township Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted October 12, 2012, 1, at all schools, 2, the Home News Tribune, 3, the Cranberry Press, and 4, filed with the clerk of the municipality. At this time, we will go to our public forum. And anyone who wishes to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. Usually, we ask you to speak onto the agenda, but we will open it for any questions that you might have. So anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone. Again, we will have use our 3-minute limit.
Excuse me.
Okay, seeing no one, we will go to the approval of the minutes for the Public Board of Education meeting of July 25th, 2012.
I'll move it.
Mr. Klein? Is there a second? Second by Mr. Kaufman. Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain on August 25th, Mike.
July 25th.
August 25th.
We're on July
Oh,
25th.
sorry, I thought you did all, I apologize.
I abstain. The meeting of the approval of the minutes for the closed session meeting of July 25th, 2012.
So moved.
Mr. Tesler, Mr. Kaufman, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I will abstain.
So noted.
The Special Board of Education meeting of August 13, 2012.
I'll move it.
Mr. Klein, Mr. Kaufman, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the closed session meeting of August 13, 2012. Mr. Kaufman,
Second.
Mr. Klein, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we will go to the approval of the minutes for Public Board of Education meeting of August 22nd, 2012.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Klein and Mr. Kaufman, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? None. We will go to the Special Public Board of Education meeting of August 25th, 2012.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Klein, Mr. Tesler, all in favor?
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Ms. Ferroni and Mr. Kaufman? I think that's it. Okay, at this time, we'll go to number 7 on our agenda, the presentation of the New Jersey Top 100 Schools. Dr. Hamilton?
Good evening, all. We have several of our teachers. We have several of our teachers who are involved in various graduate level coursework, and partial fulfillment of that responsibility, they often have various projects that they need to work on. Jackie Varicallo is one of our teachers who has a project that she's been working on and has been doing some internship. And one of the projects we've asked her to look at specifically is looking at the top 100 schools and carefully reviewing some of the data that was provided there, because with the help of one of our members of the public, we were able to ascertain that there was data at our disposal that would have suggested that in many instances we outperformed schools that were listed in the top 100, and some of that criteria changed, which resulted in us not being included on that list. So with that said, I will turn this over now to Mr. Goodall and Ms. Varicallo, who will walk us through the 100 schools presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Hamilton, and thank you to the board for having us tonight. You get to work with some great educators here at the high school, none being better than Jackie Varicallo. In her short time here, when we recruited her out of the College of New Jersey, and she was a former student here. She's done such an excellent job in the math department. You saw her out at the iFalcon store. She's really dedicated to the kids in the community here at the high school. So it's a pleasure working with her. And in her studies for her to get her master's in supervision and administration, she has to do an internship with me. So knowing some of the conversations that I've been involved with the last 9 years, we're trying to get Monroe Township High School in the top 100, making some progress and then rolling back a little bit, being a little frustrated. Her being our AP statistics teacher as well, I asked her to do a study. So I'm going to turn the mic over to her. She has some very interesting information and some food for thought to move us forward.
Hello. Thank you for listening. And so what I did was I took a look at the statistics that were gathered from Monroe Township High School and all of the schools in our district group factor, which is based on economic status, the size, enrollment, and things like that. Now, I kind of gave you a brief overview in the slideshow of the researchers, how it was studied. And so the researchers was just an independent research company, and there was no real link there, but I just cited it to give them credit. The survey included all New Jersey public schools as well as charter schools, but sometimes with the charter schools there wasn't enough information to have them included, so they were just left off the whole list. There were three main categories with the analytical process of how our rank was determined, and they were student performance, student outcome, and student environment. And what I did in this slide, in the upcoming slides, was break down these categories into subcategories and see how we ranked in each one. When you break it down, you'll find some things that are really interesting overall. So student performance had a weight of 1.5 in the ranking calculation. It was based on average combined SAT score, the percentage of students showing advanced proficiency on the HESPA, and students scoring a 3 or higher on AP tests. And since we encourage or students who take AP courses are all required to take the AP exam, that played a factor, and we still scored considerably well, and you'll see that in the upcoming slides. Student outcomes was the second, and it was equally weighted as a 1.5. And there was a single score that was calculated based on the graduation rate. So they took the number of students who graduated and divided it by the number of students who came in 4 years earlier as first-time freshmen. And then school environment was based on the average class size, the student-faculty ratio, percentage of faculty with advanced degrees, and the number of AP courses that were offered. Now, in 2010, they had a different formula than they have now. And actually, if you take a look at some of the changes that were made, it affected a lot of the schools. The Monroe Township was dropped from number 1, which they had been number 1 since 2008. They dropped to number 8 or 9 on the scale this year based on these changes. Some of the changes, or the 2010 methodology, there were certain, you could go to the next slide, yeah. Some of the changes was that now, instead of taking a look at how many students go to 2-year schools and 4-year schools, weighting them differently, now they just had that adjusted cohort rate, which was the graduation of senior year to freshman year, the enrollment. Also, there was an increased weighting on test scores, and the biggest change that probably impacted us was the availability of technology. They removed that category from the student environment. So now, overall in 2012, we ranked number 20 out of 44 district group factor F's schools. So what I decided to do was take a look at the schools who scored higher than we did and how we ranked in each one of the subcategories within each category. And that was just all of the data that was there that I used to compile this. So when I looked at student performance, we ranked 5th for the average combined SAT score with an average of 1540. The percentage of students who showed advanced proficiency on the HESPA language was a 26.7%. That was ranked 9th out of 20. Students showing advanced proficiency on HESPA math was 27.3%, which was ranked 8th. And the percentage of students earning a 3 or higher on the AP test was ranked 4th. And this is just highlighting where we stood and with the scores. Now, taking a look at student outcome, this was the graduation cohort rate, and we ranked third among the top 20. And in school environment, we're going to see some of the most prominent things that will basically stand out to you and say, oh, okay. So if you take a look at average class size, we have an average class size of 26.6 students per class. We were ranked 20th out of 20. If you take a look at the student-faculty ratio, we have an average of 8.9 students to one faculty member, and that we were ranked second. And the other factor that we were ranked 20th was the percentage of faculty with advanced degrees at 41.6%. And lastly, the number of AP test offers, we'd ranked first. And if you take a look at these, especially this slide, you'll notice that we have an average of 16 students more per classroom than the ranked number 1. And also, if you look at number 19 to us at number 20, we have 3 more students per classroom. So class size seemed to play a big role in our being number 20 overall. And same thing with the faculty. Now, if you notice in each of these categories from the breakdown, we scored in the top 10 on almost all of them. The only 2 that we ranked 20th were the class size and the percentage of faculty with advanced degrees, which indicates 2 things. It either means that the scores were so close that those 2 factors, being ranked 20, affected us that much, or the way that the formula calculated these things was kind of out of sync with what's really going on. Since we scored in the top 10, and some cases in the top 5, it would seem that 2 categories being ranked 20th was, kind of outlandish why we would be ranked 20th overall when we only scored 20 in the 2 categories. So some of the changes that could be attributed to this was the incoming growth of Monroe. Based on the developments that started in 2000 and on, we are now hitting that population boom, where they're coming through the middle and the high school. So now our class sizes are increasing. Another thing that they took away was the availability of technology, which of course now would have been an extreme beneficial component to our score, which could have made us even increase further, but they took that away for reasons that they said that technology was readily available, and the way that the budgets were going and things like that, they decided to remove it. Another thing that was kind of not a direct component, but was the grade 12 enrollment. If you take a look at the grade 12 enrollment, we were ranked number 19. So that, again, kind of gives you an idea of where we stand among other schools in terms of class size. And
So in theory, Monroe Township High School, being one of the largest district factor group of F, is working against us if you compare to the other schools that are ranked ahead of us. I know coming in as vice principal 9 years ago and then assuming the role of principal 7 years ago, this being my 8th year, we always had discussions about aspiring to be like schools around us. Well, with the new configuration and the new way they calculate this, some of those schools actually dropped behind us and we're outperforming them. So we have made significant increases, but I don't know if this is a true validation of what we're doing here at the high school. I like the fact that we have the most AP courses offered. We're really trying to increase rigor here. There are some average SAT score and some of the other outcomes. It's more of a philosophy of us trying to get all of our students college and career ready. So that's, this is all information for food for thought moving forward. And I just want to thank Jackie for providing us with that statistical information and help me kind of analyze what's going on and how that magazine, ranks schools. That comes out every 2 years. The data that was shown there is actually from our last year in the old high school. So we have made some changes, and hopefully the next time that they do the ranking, that will improve and get into that top 100.
Any questions for Jackie or Rob? Thank you, Jackie. Very well done.
Okay, before we get into the superintendent's report, we'll go into the student board members' reports.
session resolution.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Several events took place this month. There was HESPA makeup testing from October 2nd to 4th. There was the college fair on October 4th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. SATs took place on October 6th at Monroe Township High School. School was closed for Columbus Day on October 8th.
The homecoming football game was October 12th at 7 p.m. PSATs were today, October 17th. There's a marching band competition on October 20th at 6 p.m. And the fall showcase is from October 25th to 27th at 7 p.m. at the high school. There is a half day on October 26th due to staff and service.
Thank you.
Thank you for your reports. At this time, we will go to the superintendent's report. Dr. Hamilton?
Thank you. Before I begin my report, I just want to share a couple of things with the board. First of all, this week I had a meeting with representatives from the various planned retirement communities, and the purpose of that meeting was to discuss strategies that we could use for getting information out into the adult communities. And although the committee, the folks who showed up, the group was small, it was a very productive meeting. We talked about communicating with the public regarding the strategic planning process and how we could get behind the gate so that everyone was receiving the information that we wanted to share regarding their ability to participate in the strategic planning process and the ad hoc committee. We took some action steps that I think will prove to be very fruitful. We also discussed the various design teams associated with the strategic planning process, which we will begin soon. The committee chairs will be contacting members who have expressed an interest in the various design teams, and those focus questions have also been generated, and we'll be moving forward with that process very soon. Also, Madam Board President, you appointed an ad hoc committee to look at facilities for the immediate future, which is a little different than the strategic planning process. I need to know if there are board members that you are also appointing to serve on that ad hoc committee. And if we can get those names, that would be great.
Yeah, I do have names. They have volunteered to be on
Okay.
that committee.
Very good, thank you. Okay, moving on to superintendent's report. The enrollment data is included in your agenda this evening. I draw your attention to our growth from last year to now. We're up 154 students. That number is continuing to increase. Our enrollment for out-of-district placements show the comparison from June to September, a difference of only one at this point. And our home instruction report, which is relatively small for the month of September, which is pretty consistent with where we are generally this time of year. Fire and lockdown drills are listed on your agenda in compliance with state law. Moving on to the personnel report, Madam Board President and members of the Board of Education, it is recommended by the superintendent that personnel items A through NN be approved by roll call vote.
Ms. Antelis and Mr. Braverman, are there any comments or questions for Dr. Hamilton? Okay, seeing none, we'll have a roll call. Mr. Gorski?
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes to all recruits on CC. Charlie.
So noted. Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes, recuse on NN. Neal.
So noted. Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella? Yes. Mrs. Polaponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, personnel items A through NN passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to board action items, Madam Board President, members of the board, as you know, we will be engaged in the New Jersey CUSAC review this year. One of the items on the agenda includes approval for the statement of assurance. That report is due on November 15th. With that said, Madam Board President and members of the board, it is recommended by the superintendent that board action items A through N be approved by roll call vote.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Antelis, Mr. Leary, are there any comments or questions for Dr. Hamilton? Okay, seeing none, we will have a roll call. Mr. Gorski?
Mr. Kaufman?
Yes.
Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Ms. Antelis?
Yes.
Mr. Braverman?
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella? Yes. Mrs. Polaponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through M passes.
Thank you.
And that concludes the superintendent's report.
Thank you. Then we will go on to the business administrator's report. Mr. Gorski.
Madam Board President and members of the Monroe Township Board of Education, it is recommended that board action items A through O be approved by consent roll call.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Braverman, Mr. Masters. Are there any comments or questions for Mr. Gorski? Mr. Klein?
I read one of the reports in here about all the repairs that have to be done at the schools, whether it be roofs, boilers, what have you. And I also read in the newspaper that a lot of these other districts are being awarded grant money. And we're talking in particular Edison, Woodbridge, South River, that I know from the top of my head. Why aren't we able to get grants for some of these repairs? And when they bring up the bit about the percentage between the amount of students and the homes, that doesn't hold any water. We can't keep doing everything ourselves, having our residents pay for everything, and get no help from the state. There has to be something we can do to get grant money for some of those repairs. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we will have a roll call.
Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Klein.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes.
Mr. Tesler.
Yes.
Mrs. Faroni.
Yes.
Ms. Antelis.
Yes.
Mr. Braverman.
Yes.
Mr. Chiarella.
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz.
Yes.
Madam Board President, board action items A through O passes.
Thank you.
That concludes the business administrator's report.
Thank you. So we will now go to number 10 on the agenda, the board president's report. And my report today is going to deal with the topic of district finances and give you a little information about our budgets the past couple of years. In the past 2 years, our actual cuts to the budget have amounted to over $3.1 million. These cuts include trailers, positions, benefits, and transportation. In addition, the district has entered into a number of cost-saving initiatives, which I'd like to give you an idea of some of the ones that we've entered into. The insurance opt-out for single and family employees, which are negotiated in our contracts, has saved the district $1,490,000. Our insurance carrier change has saved the district $35,000. The refunding of our 2002 series bond interest savings over the life of the bonds will save the district $1.5 million. And the refunding of the 2003 series bonds interest savings over the life of the bonds will save the district $2.5 million, a little bit over. That money will go directly to the taxpayers in tax relief and lowering the tax rate for our residents. We have entered into a purchasing consortium for all our district supplies, which have saved the district $496,927. Our Applegarth asbestos remediation, which we should have done over the summer, and we waited until the winter to do it, has saved the district $35,720. The Brookside new roof on Brookside School, which was much badly needed, because we went into asphalt instead of metal, it saved our district $439,874. Our application of the high school bond surplus against taxes saved us $2 million. Our ACES, being part of the ACES Energy Consortium, has saved us $49,750. Because we join in transportation routes with other towns, it has saved us $405,863. Voice over IP savings from Verizon has saved the district $33,200. A sidebar for 2 less expensive health plans that we offer to our employees has saved the district $34,500. A grant tuition reallocation instead of salaries has saved us $175,000. A banking RFP and change of primary relationship saves us $72,000. An autistic and Down syndrome in-house program at the high school has now saved us $300,000, which we try to bring as many programs into our school district as possible instead of sending students of special needs out of district, which always saves us money to keep us in district. And renegotiating health insurance rates has saved us $274,771. And the total that we have been able to save in the past couple years in initiatives has equaled $9,850,000 to $9,850,200. And because of these savings, we have been able to do a lot of projects in our budget, our general operating budget, that we would normally need a referendum for. We have been able to renovate Applegarth School, which was badly needed because of the growth on the southern side of town and the overflow into Oak Tree School. We also renovated Monroe Township High School into the Monroe Township Middle School, sending our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders over there. We replaced the roof at Brookside, and we've done some more small projects that we had not been able to do previously. Also, a lot of this money has been used for tax relief, which has lowered the tax rate to our residents. Mr. Gorski, I don't know if you have anything yet you wish to add to that?
I think you said that very well, Madam Board President, and I would just like to express to the residents that the district engages in every cost-saving initiative possible by sharing costs with other districts, by refinancing bond series where applicable, by buying supplies and things through consortiums, by renovating in-house facilities to accommodate an autistic and Down syndrome classroom, which saved $300,000 as opposed to out-of-district tuition. And our transportation department does a fine job reaching out and calling and soliciting other districts who may have routes in our area so that we may join in their routes instead of running a bus at a lesser capacity at a much higher cost. And we share the route cost based upon the percentage of ridership. And as Mrs. Kolopanowicz indicated, in the last 2 years, the district has entered into cost savings initiatives totaling $9,850,000. Now, that hasn't all been recognized in these 2 years. For example, the bond interest goes over the next 20 years, but that does save $400,000 a year just by refunding the bonds. And we'll continue to be very diligent stewards of your tax dollars.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go to number 11, committee reports. Are there any committees that need to report this evening? Mr. Leary.
Fine. I'd like to report on 2 items. First, Superintendent Hamilton and Board Secretary, Board Administrator Gorski have been working very closely with State Senator Greenstein. They have prepared legislation for her examination, and the gist of that legislation is to have municipalities with more than 1/3 of their population, based on the latest United States Census, be given relief in the form of how much they have to pay for education. And Senator Greenstein is showing great interest in this. She has significant tenure in the state Senate, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll be of active assistance to them in any way, shape, or form. And I think that we can probably go across the aisle and get support from both the Democrats and Republicans on this. The second thing I'd like to talk about is that in a number of public meetings, allegations have been made that we are wild spenders. Now, for the last 7 years, I've been the chairman of the Finance Committee, and I take that with a significant amount of umbrage. The facts are, you go and get this document called Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. It lists all the characteristics of the school board. And on page 123, they lay out a chart that has the following captions: year 2002 to 2011. It has the number of students. In 2002, we had about 3,400 students. About 2011, we had about 5,800 students. 67% growth. Take a look at the general fund. That's the fund that provides everything: the teachers, the bus drivers, the maintenance force, everything except the bonded debt. Went from 40 million to 90 million. Take a look at that and you say, wow, 128% increase in a decade. But when you go and look at what's the cost per student, you see a gentle rise. The cumulative average growth is 36.7%. That's a 3% increase per year. That's equivalent, really, to the Consumer Price Index. But remember, in that period, we operated 89 trailers, had significant fees to the leasing agency, plus they were energy hogs. We had state mandates pouring down our head. Amy Antelis was talking about them. I was talking about my favorite one, the harassment and bullying. But they come, they give us all kinds of requirements, in some cases 25 pages long, about what does the superintendent have to do, what's his timeline. And they don't give us a dime. When you look at what has happened over the last decade, we are a magnificent, well-operated school district, and I'll be more than happy to talk to anybody, anywhere, anytime, bar none.
Thank you, Mr. Leary. Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report.
Very comprehensive. Anyone else? Mr. Kaufman.
Sure.
I hate following John Leary. We had a curriculum meeting this evening. I do want to report, in case some folks came in tonight, we have the iFalcon showcase outside, highlighting some of the things that are going on in the school district, well, actually in the high school, relative to the iPad initiative and how the students are using the iPads on a daily basis. So I hope everybody has a chance to stop by and talk to the students before they leave, which is in a few minutes. They will be here for the board meetings, I think, for the rest of this year, correct? The only thing I might suggest, we want to think about changing the times when they come, because you have it now from 6 to 7:30. You might want to just make it from 6:30 to 7:30, only because people might come in a little bit before the board meeting, and then they'll be here, so they may not be outside. You know, just you might want to adjust the times just so the students can get home and do whatever it is that they need to do. We also reviewed and approved the U.S. History 1 and U.S. History 2. That was basically housekeeping. We had looked at the information over the summer, so we just went ahead and approved those. The presentation for the graphic arts, Julia Buckley came in to give us a little presentation on some of the things that we're working with the graphic arts department, which is pretty exciting. And there will be future discussions on where this program may lead in the future. There's quite a capacity for doing this type of work here at the high school, and I think we have an opportunity to take a look at taking this information to the next level. We just got a very short briefing on the NJQSAC, which is coming up in a couple of weeks, when we get a full debriefing from Jeff. And I think that's basically it for curriculum. Did I miss anything? I don't think I did, right? We're good. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Mr. Tesler? Good going. You woke everybody up. Whoa.
I'll try not to. Try not to break this one, too. Guess I'll have to pay for that. As part of the Personnel Committee over the past several months, Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Gorski have been involved in negotiations with the Monroe Township Board of Education Staff Supported Association, which is the last bargaining unit in the cycle of negotiations. I mean, the board has gotten a fact sheet before the meeting, and I will now read a motion, so if any board members have any questions on it, they can do so. It is recommended that the Monroe Township Board of Education approve the collective negotiations agreement between the Board of Education and the Monroe Township Board of Education Support Staff Association for the period from retroactively July 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2015 agreement in the form previously submitted. The board president and the business administrator/board secretary as the attested witness are hereby authorized and directed to sign the aforementioned agreement. Additionally, the business administrator/board secretary is hereby authorized and directed to take all steps necessary to implement this action of the Board of Education.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Kaufman. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call.
Ms. Antelis? So noted. Mr. Braverman? Mr. Chiarella?
Yes.
Mrs. Ferroni?
Yes.
Mr. Kaufman? Mr. Klein?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes.
Mr. Tesler?
Yes.
Mrs. Koloponowicz?
Yes.
Madam Board President, motion passes.
Thank you. Are there any other committees that need to report out? Okay, seeing none, we will go to number 12. Is there any business by any member of the Board of Education this
Yes.
evening? Mr. Klein?
I'm going to try to make this as short as possible. It seems at the last meeting, the last board meeting, there was some comments made by certain board members stating that the township administration has done absolutely nothing to help this school district. I received a couple of calls from Council President Tamburro and Wayne Hamilton, the business administrator, stating that those statements were totally wrong. I met with them, and I have a listing here that will explain everything that the township has done. The Oak Tree School, the township gave, and I don't want anybody trying to correct me on it, I'm giving you what I was given. I'm only on the board 3 years. Most of this took effect before me. The township provided 30 acres of land for the Oak Tree School. This land was a result of a developer's agreement, which required the developer to donate land for the township use. By doing this, it cuts down the amount of homes a builder can build. Monroe Township High School. The school district began a land search to locate over 100 acres to build a new school and athletic facilities. There were no suitable parcels that were large enough, and the district could not afford the purchase. Help was requested from the administration to secure a location, and it was determined that the current location was best suited because of the shared athletic facilities. The original land and building design for the high school was to be set on 35 acres, but a small special interest group delayed the process, objecting to diversion land proposal on the premise that the site was a native Indian church ground. It cost the township, I'm skipping over a lot of this, it cost the township to have the litigation, archaeological teams to check out the burial ground. It cost the township $750,000. The solution required the township to set aside 5 acres of the previous 35 acres of the school site for further archaeological study, in addition to swapping another 175 acres of land and paying $500,000 to relocate the soccer fields. If you remember, the soccer fields used to be right where the high school is. All this is paid for by the administration, not the district. The new high school is where it is as a result of the township's initiative and partnership with the school district. It might be of interest to you that there are sidewalks in front of the new high school and from Schoolhouse Road up Prineville Road and down Prospect Plains Road to the previously mentioned soccer fields. The extension of the sidewalk was because the township saw a need to make it safer for the school children to walk to the traffic-controlled intersection at Prineville Road and Prospect Plains Road. This cost the township $36,000. As you can see, Monroe Township's administration has been in the forefront in aiding the school district to meet the demands for expansion of the schools while limiting the number of houses a developer can build by requiring them to donate land to the open space inventory and then making some of the land available to the school district. Much of the newer construction is from developments that were approved in the 1990s. The district has had more than a decade to prepare for any increases in student population. Now, I can attest to this because I'm on the zoning board, and I also attend planning board meetings. And I see what has been approved and when it's been approved. And many times they get approval 5 years, 8 years in the past, and all of a sudden they want to start to build. If it's within an approved area for homes, it goes right to the planning board. And there really is, when they apply for it, there really is nothing you can do to turn it down as long as they meet everything that's in the plans. So I can attest to what is said here is true. I have mentioned at meetings in at least the last 2 years that I'm on the board, the amount of new developments that have been approved by the planning board and or zoning board that are all family oriented, not age restricted, that was the case probably the prior 10 years. So that's all I have to say is they have helped us and they have helped us greatly, and they shouldn't be put out to dry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Anyone else? Mr. Masters?
Thank you. Don't be shocked. Yeah, don't give me that thing. I just want to talk a little about the air quality. It's not bad. Forgive me.
In here?
So there was a lot of, I guess, very colorful emails that went back and forth about the air quality at Apple Garth. And most of it arose from the September 6 findings, where we had 8 classrooms.
Luke, can you talk into your microphone?
That's
Not that one.
I was trying before. I thought you intentionally gave me that one. No, I didn't. So I look just as bad. And I guess there was a comments column, and this is what shocked me, where how you rectify a carbon dioxide issue in a classroom is to open the windows. So I did what any educated person would do, and I looked it up. And actually, shockingly, that's what they recommend at the state and the federal level. Anything over 1,000 parts per million in a school, it's actually less in an office, which is a little odd. And they recommend checking your airflow first, and then open the windows, which I think is a shocking thing. They also have a footnote that says then you might also infer or have issues with thermal variance, which means it gets cold in the classroom during the winter. But they don't tell you how to fix that. Great, right? So they passed the buck again. So, again, I'm trying to be a neutral party in this, and I guess just shed some light on it. The 1,000 to 1,100 parts per million is called a surrogate for human comfort, but not considered a health risk. Now, that is actually, I looked that up, and that's not Dr. Lynch saying that. That's OSHA, POSHA, NOSHA, and the United Federation of Teachers. Now, there's some issues with it should be only 600 parts per million above your outside air and things like that. Fine. But that seems to be, and I can give anybody this paperwork that I looked up if you really want to read it. It's exciting. Really exciting. But that seems to be what they're recommending. Is it good? In my opinion, is that a good? Not really. I think we should have lower or better air quality, but that's all I want to say about that. A couple of things I do want to hit upon, though. I just want to we have to be aware that it says it a lot in a lot of the paperwork, is certain people, kids, or even adults, are very sensitive to indoor air quality fluctuations, and I think we should be very aware and sensitive to that we might have to, I guess, accommodate people.
That's one. Two, I think we should make sure the nursing staff is aware of these issues. And actually, what OSHA tells you to do is not only record all your incidents, record location of incidents, so you can tell if there's a hot spot in your building. I think we should start doing that. And I'll bring this up at the Buildings and Grounds so we can make it official. And they also suggest if you have issues like this with classrooms that are extremely high, we have a couple, before you open the windows, that you do a regular scheduled IAQ on those. And they sell these logging devices, about $200. You stick in a classroom and it beeps if the air quality goes over a certain amount. I'm sure we can get the PTA to pay for something like that. Oh, she's not here. She'll see it on the video. But yeah, I anticipate discussing this further at the next at the next Buildings and Grounds meeting. I think it's something worth discussing, but I'm trying to just kind of calm everybody down with this. That's all I have to say.
And I believe in tonight's agenda, we approved an IAQ coordinator at Applegarth. Yes. So hopefully that'll help things.
Can I add something to that, if I may?
Mr. Klein?
When we spoke about reopening Applegarth after everything was done about the carbon dioxide, the water, and asbestos, the whole 9 yards, I made a statement, and the statement was, unless that school is 100% perfect, that I would never have voted to have the school opened. We're finding now that even though it may meet OSHA and P-OSHA and then OSHA and C-OSHA and all that, if we're borderline, in other words, if we're up here where we should be, if this is what they want as minimal and we're here, fine. But if we're sitting here, that's not a safe situation. And if it's only a matter of a certain amount of classrooms, there's got to be something we can do to make them totally safe and compliant. I said also at that time that I felt safe, that if my grandchildren were to go to that school, I would be perfectly happy with that and safe. But if this is what's coming out on the tests, it has to be addressed now. They have to locate the areas and do what we have to do to get that to the upper level of what they want, not the lower level. So that's just my comment.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Ms. Antelis?
Which one? Wait.
That's the good one.
Okay.
Don't let him touch it.
Yeah, I know.
Don't touch it.
Just want to make a couple of comments in regards to Mr. Klein's statement. I was one of the board members who talked about the township last meeting, and I didn't say that they didn't do anything, but they're not doing enough. Yes, we have worked with them well. Wayne Hamilton, excellent business administrator, works with our administrator, worked well with Wayne Holliday. Over the years, when budgets were defeated, great negotiations, they tried for both sides. Where the disappointment is the builders coming into this town, building $1 million homes, hundreds of condominiums, and no one from this board is sitting on the planning board. I believe, Mrs. Kolopanowicz, I asked you to send a letter to the mayor.
I have not done that yet. I will be doing that.
We need to be there. Things need to change. Developers cannot keep coming into our town, building houses, making millions of dollars, and walking out of here and putting the responsibility on the backs of us, the taxpayer. The time has come. Mr. Klein, you said they've just approved developments. If you really want to build here, start giving to our schools. The 30 acres was wonderful. It did. It saved the taxpayers millions of dollars. It's not enough. If you want to build in Monroe, you must do something for the schools. I know it's illegal. I've told people that year after year. But when I start opening the newspaper, seeing that other towns are doing it, you know what? If you want to build here and you don't like our impact fees, don't build here. Go somewhere else. But they know they want to be here. People want to move to this town. They want to move here with the schools. So, Mr. Tambora, I apologize. I know that you have worked very hard with the school. The TV studio, one example, a great place. We have 2 of them now. Yes, we have worked well, but it's not enough. There needs to be a big impact, and it needs to be with those developers.
Anyone else? Mr. Leary?
It's the state of the law I have a very good friend who's the superintendent for South Brunswick, and he worked for many years in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And in Pennsylvania, as a matter of right, planning board members have school board members, and they, in effect, almost have a veto power. The lobbying organization for the real estate organizations of New Jersey have built a wall against that type of behavior. And so what we really need is political action, a strong, strong political action, because if, we can nudge people and suggest people, but hey, if it gets to be push come to shove time, they have the right, as it stands right now, to come in and don't give you a nickel. And, it gets to be how good a negotiator you are. Whereas in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you say, pony up 30 acres or you're not going to get the clearance to go forward. So it's political action time.
Mr. Klein?
Couple of things. First of all, what Amy said is absolutely right. In the paper this past week, they had a breakdown of Piscataway, something with the school system. And they had a liaison person from the council that sat on the Board of Education. Exactly what Amy said is true, and I served this purpose because I voiced, even though I did it as a resident, not as a board member, and you'll notice that if you listen to any of the tapes, is argued against some of the development because of the increase in children. What Amy said is very true. There should be somebody from the Board of Ed on the planning board to be able to voice the impact that these developments have on our school system. Now, here's one that's really going to flip you. The Solo Act. Solo Act was about 2 years ago. Basically, it was an act written by Senator Solo, the idiot, where they would allow builders who applied and received permission to build PRCs, age-restricted communities. And if they did not take a deposit, they had a right to go back to the board that approved it, whether it be the zoning board or the planning board, and ask to have it converted to a family community. I testified as a resident against one of the big builders, and that was Hovnanian. Their original plan was 350 homes, age-restricted, of which 70 were going to be affordable housing. I testified against it. I basically questioned them until they put their foot in their mouth. And when I brought up the bit about the impact on the school population, I was cut short by their attorney. According to the state, you cannot use the increase in student population to turn down the application. To shorten my story is they wound up voting it down. They came back with another application which cut everything by more than half. So they kept 130 some odd age-restricted homes. The 70 affordable homes, the money for that went elsewhere for affordable housing, and I think we wound up with 129 family. If you take the average of 2 per, you're talking roughly 260 kids. Right after that, you had McDade, Renaissance Properties. Their original application in front of the zoning board was 135 age-restricted homes. They came in, asked for a conversion. I had to recuse myself because they used the same attorney and did not want me to testify, though I asked people to ask the same questions I asked, and it was not done, and it was approved. So you had 130 there, is another 260 kids. Where are you going to put them? And that's from the state. And that's the state that doesn't want to give us our rightful share of money. But they can load up kids into our schools. Sayreville, about a year and a half ago, there was a builder that was going to build, I think it was a development of over 2,000 homes. It was going to be condos and townhouses and so on. As I remember, the builder donated $8 or $10 million to go towards the schools. Something that I did say at a council meeting, and I will repeat it again at the next meeting I go to. I don't know whether you're allowed to do it, you're not allowed to do it, because the state steps in. Every builder that wants to build family homes in this community should pay towards the schools, period, cut and dry. And I'm sick and tired of listening to the crap that comes from the state that only favors what they want for their private interest groups and don't give a damn about the tax-paying residents or their children. Those are the facts.
Right on.
Anyone else on the board?
Only 3?
Just one more thing to say. And sort of aiming this at our governor. We all know what's going on. We know that the governor was on a radio show. A lot of people called in about the tax increase, calls to the governor's office, and there was an investigation. What I don't understand was when the governor cut 95% of our funding and our residents and our parents and our board were sending things to the state, why was there no investigation then? When surrounding districts were not cut the same thing as Monroe, and they knew it, I believe the superintendent tried to meet with the governor's office and he got an aid. Why was there no investigation then?
Mrs. Faroni?
Just piggybacking on funding, last meeting I read a statement detailing what Jamesburg has paid to Monroe in tuition, in transportation over the years, and our current funding. Still had 2 community members come up and question what we owed. So I can only attribute that to either posturing or not paying one bit of attention to my statement. We're at a crossroad now where the debt service is an issue, and as I stated at the last meeting, Jamesburg has a very small budget, and I find it appalling that the state completely ignores the fact that our K-8 program has had to give up extracurricular activities, sports, librarian, computer teacher, because they do not, the system is flawed, and the ability to give a small district enough money to provide those, they are not luxuries, they are necessities in 2012. So unless the state comes up with a better plan to fund Monroe, the additional debt service, Jamesburg does not have it. We have paid what we have at the cost of the K-8 district. Without bankrupting the town or the school district, we cannot give that additional money. And it's appalling to me that they cannot come up with this money to either give Monroe directly or give it to us to give to Monroe. So there's discrepancies and just terrible usage of money all throughout the state.
Anyone else? Mr. Tesler?
Thank you. Just a question for Mr. Klein. I heard the discussions over many years about having builders contribute money and it being illegal. And if other towns are doing it, maybe, I know you have contacts, you talk to people, how do they get away with it without?
I have to find out.
I would love to know that.
Mr. Klein?
I'm sorry. Can I speak?
No.
I'm trying to do it legally. I'm going to speak to Council President Tamburo and Wayne Hamilton to find out. My understanding was, listening to applications in front of the planning board, that certain things that they would ask a developer to do was illegal by the state. In other words, the politicians can do everything they want to do, most of which is illegal. But when you want to do something to help the residents, you can't do it. What I want to find out is if there is a law that states they cannot ask a developer to pay towards the schools, which I think is asinine. And when you look at some of these restrictions that we have from the state, they make no sense. And that's only one instance of protecting the developers. We can go back to the original Abbott decision. And the Abbott decision was, Mount Laurel decision, was to force the towns to break their minimum lot requirements. So where I lived in East Brunswick, the smallest lot was 1/4 acre. But go out to Bernardsville or Basking Ridge, where some of your Supreme Court justices live, and they have 2 acre, 3 acre, 5 acre. So that Mount Laurel decision was made for and designed for the developer to build cluster housing, townhouses, condos, where instead of having, if it's quarter of an acre, 4 homes per acre, they could put 25 or 30 homes per acre. And that's what created our problem originally in overcrowding. And now you have it with the Sarlo Act. So it's a bad situation. But I will find out by the next meeting. I'll have that information for
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Mr. Kaufman?
Yeah, just real quick, I know it's getting late. Because the topic this evening is Board of Education funding, I thought I'd bring up something that really wasn't addressed by the budget cuts that we've been doing over the past few years. Because a lot of you are new to the board meetings and haven't been regular attendees or may not have even seen this on Channel 28. The one thing I wanted to bring up, too, is the fact that we have enterprise funds here in the district. What that means is we have different parts of our community here that generate money for the district and are self-sustaining. One of them is the food services that we have here that come out of this building. This building generates enough food for our elementary schools as well as going out of district to other locations. Academy Learning, and where else? Academy Learning. One of the things that we are constantly looking to do is look for opportunities to have enterprise fund, which again is a way to make money. Keep in mind, we are a nonprofit, so we are quite limited in that fashion. But we have the BASC program, which is something that we're getting a piece of now, and as was brought up by Amy, I agree with Amy 100%. I think in a couple of years, we will be able to assume that control and reap all of the profits and all of the money that comes in through that and expand the services. We had requests from the parents at that time to carry over on days when the school is closed, on days when the school is on holiday. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to basically change the rules of engagement, right? We have a lot of expenditures, but to a certain extent where we can, I think we've demonstrated over time that we will turn up every possibility to look to make money for the district, which of course will lower the debt that we have to pay with respect to the budget. So just keep that in mind too. We do a lot of these other things that are kind of not normal. I mean, Mecca is another example of where we have a service to our teachers to provide in-house daycare, and that lowers our costs too because we don't have to pay for subs. Teachers come back to school faster. So it is actually not just a service to our own, but it's also a way that we can help lower our costs over time.
It's a win-win.
Well, yeah, but people don't like win-win. All right, so that's just another thing to keep in mind. And we're going to keep giving out information like this so everybody can be a very informed consumer as far as how this Board of Education works.
Hey, is there anybody else? Mr. Masters?
Now I have a speech about asbestos. No. It's a more positive thing. I just wanted to recognize a teacher. Oak Tree has given out its first ever Golden Apple Award for Teaching Excellence to Christina Adio. I just want to tell her she did a great job. It's a big deal for her. She's very excited about it. So on a more positive note.
So nice. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one, we will go to closed session resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Township of Monroe hereby moves to go into closed session in accordance with Sunshine Law, Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21 to discuss the following subjects: legal advice on an employment issue, personnel, baseball investigation, student matters, harassment, intimidation, and bullying, incidents 1 and 2. The discussion conducted in closed session can be disclosed to the public at such time as the matters have been resolved.
So moved.
Mr.
Second.
Kaufman, and who was Mr. Tesler? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? At this time, the board will move into closed session.
Allegedly, they're holding. So,
1 minute.
Uh-huh.
Oh, these are the minutes.
I'm going to be promoted.
Yep.
The doctor said to stamp 1A, ready for immediate induction.
At this time, the Board of Education will reconvene into public session, and we will go to number 14 on the agenda, the public forum. Anyone wishing to speak, please come to the microphone and state your name and address for the record. And at this time, we will adhere to our 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Joe Castelluccio, 20 Ashley Court, Monroe Township. I'm part of a group, we've been here before, Monroe Citizens for Responsible Government. A couple of things I wanted to talk about. One, to Dr. Hamilton, he recently put a rebuttal in the Home News, and he rebutted an article written by Deborah Schneider. Primarily, she was talking about the school system, and he took offense to what she said. But what happened here was that he also went on to talk about groups, and I included ourselves in that group because we had been very vocal. And he said that I generally do not respond to criticisms of our work and ideals, since I am of the opinion that expending energy on trying to correct misinformation creates distractions. So he then went on to say that, however, I am growing weary of the constant misrepresentation of facts perpetuated by those who manipulate the freedom of speech to promote a hidden agenda. And again, I took a little bit of a, to use Mr. Leary's word, umbrage on this, because there are no hidden agendas when we come before the board. We're pretty open on what we want to talk about. Then he went on to say we do not have the right, simply by virtue of our citizenry, to say whatever we want. We do. It's called the First Amendment. We do say whatever we want, and we say it. Obviously, we're not supposed to offend anybody, but nonetheless, a lot of times things are offensive, but guess what? We can still say it because we do have a First Amendment. And then he goes on to say that this Ms. Snyder, I don't know who she is, went on to talk about things that she didn't mention, that the good things that the board does. And he said, I know that there are some who may think our students would be fine chiseling on a stone tablet in one-room schoolhouses. We never said that. We said we were pro-education. We said we would wish, and this is a quote, you spend all the money on education, and we made that very clear in everything that we've ever said. And then he said, in fact, it is welcome and encouraged that he doesn't like to have rude, discourteous attacks that stray from the very lessons we were taught in kindergarten, that you speak to others the way you'd want them spoken. Now, it's great that you want to take the high ground after you've insulted all of us, but all I can say is that what we talk about is cutting wasteful spending. When Mr. Leary earlier said something about that, it's only been about 3% increase per child over the last 10 years, and that's keeping up with CPI. Mr. Leary's CPI is at 1.3%, not 3%. But nonetheless, using your numbers, over that same period of time, our taxes have gone up 100%. That ratio is not good. So when we talk about our costs going up 3%, but cost to the people in this room going up 100%, that's a huge increase. So all I can say in closing is that, yes, there are things that get heated sometimes. There are things that are emotional because they deal with people's lives. And we need to have you cut spending, not $9 million, you cut spending to the point of what we can afford. That's how you cut spending. You don't just cut it and say $9 million. You got a $90 million budget, that's 10%. Any one of us could go back into our household and easily cut 10% out of everything we do without any problem at all. Okay, so what we need you to do is continue to work on spending, and when we write articles like this, yes, we can get offended by that as well. Thank you.
Mr. Castelluccio, let me respond to that, please.
Okay.
Firstly, the group that you represent has been very respectful, and the discourse has been, in my opinion, very professional. So my reference, while your group has been the most public group, there are many groups who are not as public. So I really was not referring to your group, quite
You
frankly.
could see how we could understand that, since we've been in front of you the most in the last couple of months.
You have, but there are many groups who don't come to board meetings who communicate to me through other means, PTOs, emails, letters, things of that sort. So I actually really wasn't referring to your group, quite honestly. However, that being said, the rebuttal was really to get information out that needed to be, in my estimation, that needed to be out. And while I agree with you that we all have a First Amendment right, I do think we have to exercise some responsibility in making sure that when we report things, particularly when they're reported publicly and televised, for example, that the information is accurate. I think we have some responsibility to do that. Nobody can make you do that, of course, but I do think that as when I sit at this table and I'm representing the district, I have an obligation to the board and to the students of this district and to the staff members to make sure that we are making sure that our public gets the full picture. And when articles like that are written and they do not represent the full picture, I have an obligation to do that. So that was the intent of my letter. It was not an attack on your group, quite frankly. In fact, if all groups came the way your group has, I'd be fine.
Okay, because we talked about the iPads at probably ad nauseum, but the point was that was a $4 million, or whatever way you want to talk about, soft costs, hard costs, over periods of time, it was $4 million. You know, there are plenty of things that go on in the way we spend money, and we don't say don't spend money. We say think about it before you spend money. Make sure you have it. And quite frankly, if we didn't have $4 million to spend on iPads, you know, books have been working for about 150 years right now, or maybe more. We could still use books and maybe wait another couple of years for the iPads. That's the way I looked at it. Thank you.
Huey Wallfish, 169 Valencia in Renaissance on 33. I want to thank you for the cost-cutting efforts of $9 million over 2 years, which makes it a 5% reduction because it's 2 years. But aside from that, I'm a former budget analyst for the United States Customs Service. We budget with $15 billion, so I know a little bit about budgeting. And I noticed in almost all your actions tonight, you authorized this, you authorized that, but in not one time did you discuss the budgetary impact of those actions? For example, authorizing the contract negotiations, you did not give budget parameters. In authorizing the leave and everything else, which I understand has to be done because you have a contract to do it, but under no circumstances there were you discussing the budgetary impact of it, telling each other, okay, in order to do this, we're going to have to offset this, and we're going to have to do something, take another action, and you did not appear to be considering what we're all saying, the budgetary impact on us citizens. As to the, I appreciate and laud the county for making those contributions, which if they didn't do, they'd probably be sued and it would cost them a lot more money. So I'm not impressed with those things. So what I'd like you to do when you're making a presentation and telling people, oh, we're going to do this and this and this, to also include the budgetary impacts and tax consequences for those of us out here. I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Manny Silverman, 8C Ingram Drive, Monroe Township, New Jersey. In Concordia, I'd like to address two people on one different issue per each of them. First, we'll do Mr. Leary. Mr. Leary, you said that you saved $9-point-something million over the last 2 years.
I didn't say that.
I think that came out of my report.
Yeah, that you were reading off the.
That was me.
Yeah, you said somebody said.
Page 123.
I understand, but okay, on your report, I thought you were talking about the same thing she was.
No.
Okay, you said we saved $9.2 million for the last 2 years. I'll give you an extra $800,000, so you saved $10 million over the last 2 years. I'd like to know how come in each of those 2 years, my school budget, part of my tax, my real estate tax, which I don't understand that, and I never did, but it's in everywhere you go, hasn't gone down. If you saved all this money, where did all this money go?
Mr. Gorski, would you like to respond to that?
Certainly. That's a very, very good question. Number one, as Dr. Hamilton mentioned in the enrollment report, the district's growing about 250 new students a year. So if everything was stagnant as far as growth, the estimates that we could enact cost savings measures of 3%, 5%, whatever you want to choose, might be plausible. But when you're adding on all the extra fiscal responsibility of educating new students, new books, new supplies, new teaching staff, as well as inflation with everything else that goes on, that creates an automatic increase to the budget just by enrollment. $3,750,000 of the budget this year was just due to new enrollment growth. So, again, I can appreciate the fact of cost savings measures applied to a flat, stagnant budget, just like a corporation might be that had no increasing sales or decreasing sales, but our enrollment is increasing steadily, and that's a great strain on the district. Number two, taxes is a separate function other than just budgetary and spending. The tax levy that's approved by the board every year is shared amongst the rateable base throughout the township. And it's really as simple as ordering a pizza and splitting it with 8 people, your rate is 1/8 of the pizza. But when the rateable base decreases, that pizza price stays the same, but 3 people leave the table. So everybody's rate increases automatically. In other words, if the district had no additional appropriation spending and we had an absolute flat budget, regardless of the enrollment increase that I mentioned before, with a decreasing rateable base, like we've had in the last 2 years of $78 million in 12-13 and $70 million in 11-12, the tax rate automatically is going to increase between 5 and 6 cents. So that's one of the factors that we've had to really struggle with. The other one is state aid. And I know everybody's getting fatigued with that topic, but quite frankly, the state has its own model for funding school districts. And according to that model, the Monroe Board of Education should have over $9 million of state aid. Instead, we get $2.6 million. Why? Because of a wealth-equalized formula that reduces equalization aid because of income per pupil and also property wealth per pupil. And the other one is called categorical aid. They give you a fixed rate times the number of students in various categories, special ed and so on. But even that fair amount that's not based on wealth is reduced because of over-adequacy status. So if Monroe was to receive, even what the state's own model determines what we should have, we would have a school tax decrease, not an increase. These are the 2 biggest variables that are affecting your taxes.
Okay, I agree with part of you, and that leads me to my next person. But I want to correct what I believe is an error in your math. We shouldn't be getting $9 million. We should be getting closer to $29 million. I'm comparing it to Old Bridge, and I probably can compare it to half the towns in this state. Nobody is getting $2 million. Colts Neck is richer than us. I will bet you Colts Neck gets more money than we do. And they make us look like impoverished, everybody. And they get more money. So I don't understand what you're talking about. This goes to my next thing. The young lady here said, well, they took away, 95% of our help or our aid or whatever you want to call it?
Of our state funding.
Well, whatever you want to call it. It's aid, state funding, call it what you want. That goes to everything this gentleman said, and when you said, well, go do what you can, you want me to go to Trenton and talk to Christie? Get me an appointment. You said, well, you're going to have to go do something about it. Who's the you?
That's not what I said. I said that why isn't the governor having an investigation into it?
Well, because if you and the council and Linda Greenspan and our Congress people all got together and maybe made some noise, maybe we could get something like that.
Mr. Silverman?
Yes?
We have been making quite a bit of noise, and we've had several meetings at the state level with legislators, campaign letter writing, petitions have been out. We have done, and including having consultation with the Ed Law Center about feasibility of filing a lawsuit. And we've tried to be very public about how we report that information so that our taxpayers, our citizens would know that we are not just taking this lightly, and we are fighting a very hard battle, but we are fighting it. So I assure you that we have not been sitting idly by.
Are you doing it in unison? I hate to tell you your job, but you have to do it together. You can't have a meeting with them with 4 of your people and 3, and Tempuro with 2 of his people and 4 with 3 of his people. You got to go in as a united front. That's why we're getting shafted. If you go in as a united front and care what the citizens and residents get as a united front, maybe that works. Because evidently, your way hasn't worked in, 15 years? Because they took it away before I got here, and I'm here 7 years. So it's not just now. They just didn't take the 95% away the day before yesterday. They took it away pre-7 years ago. So evidently, the fight's not working. Maybe you need new trainers, but it's not succeeding. We should have had some success in our fight if you did it the right way. Evidently, you're not. And you can tell me why this is, because I can't figure it out.
Okay, thank you. But I just want to say that recently, the Board of Education and the township got in, Mr. Gorsuch is going to report on that, met with our Senator Greenstein. So we had the board and the township working together with our administration for the government. Mr. Leary reported on that before, and I'll just have Mr. Gorski give a quick summary of that. Again.
I'm going to go through this as quickly as possible, but I think I'll touch on the crux of the matter. The figurative information that you compared to before about other districts, about the distribution of aid, we have a chart on that, and you're absolutely right. The figure that I was referring to, 9 million, is the state's own funding model, what they calculate that what we should receive. But that's their model. And they base the model upon a district's ability to afford its own education costs. Monroe, in the state's opinion, can support its own costs of education, and the state will afford you the opportunity to pay for it their own. That's a quote from the State Department of Education.
Well, so can Colts Neck.
Excuse me.
A lot quicker than we can, and I can go on to many more. So if you give me these things, I cut you off because of that.
Let me finish.
Okay.
The districts that can't afford a thorough and efficient education on their own and can't afford their adequacy budget, the state distributes more aid to. Now, what the Board of Education has done, and Dr. Hamilton and I have put a lot of research and time into this, is we looked at all the different avenues of how we can get more funding for our district. What's the most feasible way that will be approved by the state that has the best shot of getting us the most money? And what we're proud to have delivered to Senator Greenstein last week was actual legislation that we wrote, and it stems around the following. Prior to the School Funding Reform Act of 2008, school districts got an extra type of aid. It was called Senior Supplemental Stabilization Aid. And what that means is districts with a high percentage of senior citizens, age 65 years or older, got an additional $500 a student for extra aid. That would be $3 million for our district. But what the legislation that we're writing, because of failed efforts by other Assembly and Senate bills to try to get something similar through, is a little different. What we're saying, and we've reported this very clearly, and we've made traction, and I'll explain that in a minute, is that a district with 1/3 population, according to the last census, of residents 65 years or older, we request that the state fully fund their own model for financing schools. What that would do is give Monroe $9.5 million of aid from the state's own report instead of a measly $2.6 million. That's not on par with some of the averages you discussed before, but it's a great start, and this aid is designed to go against the tax levy to help seniors who are hurting very badly in this economy. Senator Greenstein thought this was a wonderful legislative proposal. She's going to recommend it to Senator Sweeney. He's the Democratic powerhouse in Trenton.
President of the Senate.
And we're asking, actually, as Mr. Leary mentioned before, we're asking the support from the community to write to Senator Greenstein and Senator Sweeney and ask their support for passing this legislation, because this will help the seniors more than anything else that we can come up with at this time. And I'll be happy to, you could have this and take this and read this at your leisure.
And we've also, just for the record, delivered petitions to Governor Christie, Senator Greenstein, Senator Benson, Assemblyman D'Angelo, and Commissioner Cerf, with 1,100 signatures on our petition regarding this issue.
Only 1,100 signatures? Is that including the computer also and everything?
That includes the folks who signed the compute. The only thing it does not include is a separate petition that was taken up in the Rossmore development that was delivered separately, and I don't know how many signatures were on there.
I delivered 125 signatures.
Okay.
What's our population in Monroe Township?
40,000 people.
11? You're kidding. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about getting it out to the people, and you have a
We talked about
petition.
it at our last board meeting, and we also advertised it on our website. But
Alert Now, PTOs.
It's not something we could go door to door and ask people to do that, but we've tried to get it
It's less
around
than
to the
2%.
community.
That's 2%.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public?
Hi, Corinne Masters, 9 Michaela Court. Two things. One, I want to publicly thank Dr. Hamilton. When my oldest son was in third grade, he was in first grade. He had 30 children in his class. This year, my second son only has 22, and the difference it has made across the first grades, being that I'm in school a lot of days, it's tremendous, and I'd like to thank you, and I know a lot of people want to cut things, but that has made a huge difference from 30 children down to 22 in a class.
I appreciate that, thank you.
Secondly, Mrs. Skirby isn't here tonight, but she asked me to read this on behalf of her and the PTA. So I'm sorry that I cannot be here tonight. As head of the Oak Tree Applegarth PTA, I wanted to let you know that we have had a great response to our petition to ensure funding is not cut from the upcoming school budget. Although Monroe has seen an increase in taxes, it is important to realize that it was not caused in part by the Board of Education's school budget. The Oak Tree Applegarth PTA is committed to helping fund programs and services that are outside the budget. However, even we have limits. On behalf of the PTA, we will be sending a copy of the petition once we are done collecting signatures. Please remember that our children deserve a proper education, not one designed by individuals solely looking for tax cuts. We are an up-and-coming district. Please do not let it get destroyed. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Masters.
May I make an observation?
Mr. Leary, we'll hold it till after public forum.
Fine, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. Jody Desai, 2 Northwind Court. I just had a question about Applegarth School. I was in the school. It actually looks really great. I'm really impressed with how it looks. However, it's my understanding, according to a recent air quality test, that there are some classrooms that are still high in CO2 levels. I was just wondering, what is your long-term plan, if any, to change that for those rooms with those very high CO2 levels, and if the current protocol is to open the windows, what is going to happen in the upcoming cold winter months? Thanks.
Yeah.
Ma'am, with regard to your first question about the CO2 levels and what is the district required to do about it? First of all, according to Dr. Lynch, elevated CO2 levels are not hazardous to humans. It's not the optimal situation for allowing fresh air flow, and that's all CO2 is a gauge of how much fresh air flow is entering the building. According to POSHA, if elevated levels exceed 1,000 units, that their prescribed remedy is to open the window. That's according to POSHA, and that's delineated in Dr. Hamilton's Applegarth letter that's posted on our website. Matter of fact, some residents actually called POSHA and asked them to come out and do their own inspection, which they won't do because they won't respond to individuals, or you have to be a staff member or official.
Okay,
So-
but is that for adults or for children? Because the research shows that CO2 levels heightened decreases concentration, causes headaches, like things like that in adults. So the concern is these are children and they're in a situation where they need to concentrate. So that's my concern. POSHA, is it a standard met for children? Because obviously they're different.
Yes, it is consideration for
Okay.
children. And as a matter of fact, I'm reading right from POSHA's excerpt here. Carbon dioxide, CO2, is a gas that is exhaled by building occupants. Because the gas is generated in an occupied building as a byproduct of normal human respiration, it is a convenient gas to measure as an indicator of the amount of outside air exchange. If CO2 concentration exceeds 1,000 parts per million, the employer is required to ensure that the system is operating as designed. The standard does not require employers to modify or upgrade existing systems to achieve this range.
Okay.
So with that regard, we have inspected our systems with a professional outside firm. They're operating as they're designed. And in fact, the ballasts that open and close for allowing airflow are 100% open and allowing maximum airflow into the building. Now, the window opening, according to the county office, is also a very effective means for allowing fresh airflow in the building.
Okay.
And with regard to the winter comment that you mentioned, my understanding of Applegarth, and Dr. Gorman can comment on this also, is that with that old boiler in the building, it tends to run rather warm naturally. So teachers in the past had opened windows just to make it a little less arid in the room, and I don't think we'll be facing a problem where anybody is cold.
And we have requested a visit from POSHA, and they will be coming unannounced, unscheduled, and they will be making any recommendations that they think are appropriate at that time.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Doug Poy, Doug Poy, 4 Tamarack Lane Road, in Regency. I've gone to the trouble once again to work up my comparative study of Monroe versus other districts in various cost categories on a per pupil basis, and I'd like to share that with the board since you are soon beginning to develop budget. It might be informative, it might not, but I did spend quite a bit of time doing this. This is the 3rd year, so it'll look very much like it has in the past. It's just been updated with the latest information that's available from the state website. And then I have several questions on the agenda. These are basically things that I didn't understand, and I feel that there's possibly other people in the public that didn't understand them. On page 20, item H, and some of this is going to be mundane. I do apologize for that, but I do have some questions about either understanding or in particular, item H. I see that we are approving once again the Rosetta Stone language program, and I would assume that that's for instruction in Spanish in the elementary program. I don't know when we started doing that. I think maybe it was this past year or this year was the first time we started using Rosetta Stone.
A couple years ago when we had to.
Oh, okay. Has the district done any kind of study to determine the effectiveness of that? Because I know in speaking with one of my grandchildren who used to love Spanish, she finds it completely boring, and she doesn't feel as if she's learning anything at all. And I'm just passing that on as an anecdote. But my question is, has the board really looked to see whether or not that program is working for our children, as opposed to having a live teacher working with those kids?
We are doing an assessment of all of our programs and services. We're creating a priority list for assessing the cost-benefit analysis of the various programs, and Rosetta Stone is one of them that's slated for review this year.
Okay, thank you. In item I, it talks about the attached memorandum of understanding, but the agenda doesn't contain that attached memorandum, so I don't know what the memorandum states. My question is also, is this of any cost to the board, or is the board, since this is a case study and it would benefit the publisher, is the publisher providing us with any revenue to participate in this case study?
Yes.
And can you say how much that is?
What is it, 1,000 per teacher?
They're compensating teachers for their time. So it was for the case study, it's $1,000 a teacher, and I do believe a $200 stipend as a liaison. They are not, just so you know, Mr. Boyd, we are not identified in the study in any way, shape, or form. No one from Monroe, the school, the teachers will be identified. It's actually a partnership to help us better understand and get feedback to help get better understanding of the iBook technology that's going on. And they're providing free professional development, working with the teachers in tandem.
Okay, thank you. On page 21, there's item A. I just didn't understand this. Okay, can you somehow, in layman's terms, tell me what that's about?
Is that on the board secretary's report?
It's under the board the business administrator's report. I'm sorry.
Yes. The district's required to have a 5-year long-range facility plan. And this resolution identifies the number of projects and the estimated cost over the 5-year plan. That's the $7,997,000 figure that's there. It's estimated that the district might be eligible for some debt service aid through the EDA. That's listed there. And furthermore, the district is now in the process of updating this long-range facility plan. So we will have more accurate figures for this on next year's report. But this is a required disclosure of the contents figuratively that are contained in the 5-year facility plan, which is required to address facility needs throughout the district, roofs, and projects that we need to engage in over the next 5 years.
So these are essentially maintenance-type projects or refurbishments to existing facilities?
Not so much maintenance, but this is more capital improvement oriented, bigger items like roof replacement, window replacement, boiler replacements, not your normal carpet replacement.
Okay, and there's 124 projects?
Yes.
That we've identified that need funding?
Yes, and the 5-year facility, 5-year facility plan is also approved by the state.
Okay, and just help me to understand, this comes to about $8 million. And there is hope for some grant money of about $2 million, it looks like. But of that remaining $6 million, tell me how that works in terms of the budget on an annual basis.
Well, the projects that the board was able to approve through the Building Grounds Transportation Committee review process would be contained in the budget. It would be in the capital fund, Fund 12, and you're only allowed to budget for capital improvements in that fund that are in your 5-year facility plan. And if the board was to be able to authorize all of these projects, the local share would be approximately $6 million, depending on how much aid is available through grants from the EDA and so on. Of course, it's unlikely that all of those projects would be able to. We nibble away at it as we can on a priority basis. But the percentage that's not covered through grants would have to be raised through taxes.
So would it be a correct assumption for example, to take that $6 million and say there's going to be slightly over maybe $1 million a year for the next 5 years?
I wouldn't be comfortable with that estimate because we have on the last few years, we haven't gone that high. Only in the 12-13 budget did we go over $1 million in capital improvements, and it was with the use of about $675,000 of unexpected state aid increase that the board directed to do the Brookside roof replacement project.
Okay, thank you. This is now page 24. It's still, well, it's item I, but it's on this agenda, page 24, item I, the connector trail authorization. I know it seems like a very minor thing and it doesn't seem educational at all, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. Is this authorization simply authorizing the trail, or is there some expense to the board for building this trail?
There is no expense to the board. It is just authorizing the township to use the space.
Okay, so it's just saying it's okay to use that space to do this trail.
Exactly.
But we're not paying anything. Somebody else is going to pick up any cost associated with it?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. And the bleacher foundation stabilization, item G on that same page, I know it says the middle school, but could you tell me where those bleachers are? Is it the bleachers with the...
Those are the bleachers on the new synthetic turf football field.
Okay.
The visiting bleachers had footings that had deteriorated away, and the bleacher system was in danger of collapse if it should continue to deteriorate. So this item went to Building Grounds Transportation Committee. It was authorized to go ahead and do it in a cost-effective way to stabilize the footing by jacking up the whole bleacher system and then reinforcing it with much more concrete and not redesigning with architectural fees and the whole construction of new bleachers.
Okay, so this is actually the field, the bleachers were the field that they play varsity football games and things of that sort?
Yes.
It's not that other field that some of the kids call the cage, where they often play lacrosse or
The
things
other
of that
turf
nature?
field. No,
That's
it's-
correct.
it's
Okay,
not there.
okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure I understood. And this is going to be somewhat of a repeat of what another gentleman said. You take a look at items AA through K. There's a whole bunch of items here. They start basically around page 9, but particularly on page 10 and 11. And you're approving various teachers and paraprofessionals for after-school tag program. But there's no information here in terms of what that cost. And I think the public would appreciate, I know I would appreciate knowing the estimated total cost of those types of approvals. And it goes on. Sometimes you approve personnel on an hourly basis, so many hours a week, but there's no projection in terms, or no estimate in terms of what the total cost is. I just think it would be beneficial to the public to know what that is, and I know that was mentioned earlier, and you've told me my time is up, so I'll get out of the way.
That's okay, but I'll be happy to address your question briefly. All of these appointments that you see here are required and customary. All of these items have been considered already with the development of the budget. All of these have been reviewed by the board, and all of these are included in the 12-13 budget. None of these are new and unanticipated expenditures which would require the degree of analysis that you're hinting toward, because that was already done with the whole budget process.
I hear what you're saying, but I respectfully disagree with not including it. I just think it would be beneficial to the public to know what we're paying for that on an annual basis, even though it's been built into the budget. I think it would be beneficial to have that broken out just so we could see that. Thank you.
Hi, Karen Rapp, 44 Eldorado Way. I just want to find out if you're still going to be having Applegarth as 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade next year, because I know rooms are very limited.
We are looking at that. We just got our demographic study in, and I don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay, because I know there's only really one empty classroom and 2 classrooms that really need fixing up, and I think there's 6 second grade classrooms at Oak Tree right now.
We're looking at it. It's on the
Okay.
radar.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Nelson Chen, 4 Ashley Court. I have a few points to make, and I'd like to make them first, and then you can answer, because I know I've got my 3 minutes. The first question is to you, Mr. Klein. Thank you for your public service with the Planning and Zoning Board and here on the Board of Education. And my question to you is, if you were sitting on the Planning and Zoning Board and you recognized that all this building was going on and this overpopulation with the houses, and you sit now on the Board of Education, knowing that impact, what that impact was going to have to the members of the town here vis-a-vis the tax bill, because obviously they're mandated that you have to provide schooling for these kids. Why didn't you try to drive or better inform the board that all of this was going on and it was coming, and they should have prepared for it? Let me finish, because I have several points, and I don't want them to go into my 3 minutes. The second item that I'd like to find out about is the $35,000 that we're lending to the MECA, the Monroe Early Childhood Academy. I thought that was supposed to be a zero sum, and it really wasn't going to cost us anything. And I just want to make sure that that is, in fact, the case. Item number 3 is, you know, a lot of people that sat in the audience and a lot of people that are taxpayers here have been here for a number of years and had kids that went through the school system. And we understand the parents at Oak Tree and their concern and what they're saying, and we're not against the schools. We want to make sure the kids have schooling, okay? If the tax increases keep going on, there's not going to be anybody left in the town to pay the taxes to have the schools properly funded. They're going to all be funded by the states because nobody's going to live here, okay? I just wanted to make that point. And the last thing I want to say is you've got all of these projects, 124 projects for the buildings and grounds, and I understand they're necessary. We took backpacks from Costco. Why can't we tell Costco, you know what, don't give us 1,000 backpacks, fix the roof or fix the boiler at Applegarth, okay? And that's it. Go ahead. Thank you.
As far as notification about what we find that's approved or an application that's up for a vote at the Planning Board and Zoning Board, I have mentioned that at many, many meetings, letting the people know, the residents, along with our board, what was approved, how many homes it would be, and I must have spoken till I'm blue in the face at these meetings, and most of our meetings we had 8 people, 10 people, 15 people. I've done the same thing when we've had a truckload here. We had 200, 300 people. When somebody brought up something before, I think it was Mr. Silverman, concerning, my time's up?
Your time is up, sir.
Your time is
Give
up.
me my next point, please.
So I've asked people, I'm on the board 3 years, after we had the big cut, well, they cut us to 238,000. I asked parents, I asked residents that we hear. I wrote letters to the newspapers, the Home News, the Sentinel had them printed, to try to light a fire under people, to write letters to the governor, Corzine at the time, Christie now, Christopher Surf, and I think her name was Hendricks, who was before him, Stuart Rabner, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and last but not least was Mr. Sciarra from the Newark Education Law Center, who brought the original Abbott versus Burke case, and that's what screwed up all the funding. I brought this up to nauseam at every meeting. And lastly, when we had to make cuts, there were a load of parents here, and I asked, how many of you have complained to any of the before-mentioned departments? One person. Chrissy, who is the head of Oak Tree. Nobody did anything. And unless the people in the state, I've spoken to Linda Greenstein, I've spoken to the governor directly, one-on-one, at a town hall meeting. After the town hall meeting, nobody wants to do a damn thing for us.
But my question was, and I understand and I applaud your efforts, my question was, how did you influence the school board in letting them know to better prepare for that impact that's coming down the road, so it wouldn't have been as much of a tax burden to the taxpayers?
When they did, when we're talking about doing the
Well, let me just say that Mr. Klein has been a board member for 42 months, and probably 40 of those months, because I'll give you a couple of times that you were on vacation, he did bring that information back to the Board of Education. But also in those 42 months, we've probably increased our school population 450 students, 500 students.
School.
So while we know the impact of our taxes, We also have to educate 500 kids. We have to find them a classroom. 500 kids is a school. We have to find them a classroom. We have to find them a desk and a chair. We have to get them books. We have to give them the curriculum that they all deserve.
Hire the teachers.
Exactly, have the teachers. We opened up Applegarth School because we needed the space. So there are custodial staff, secretarial staff, security staff, a nursing staff that we had to put into Applegarth School. So we did know that these buildings were coming, and we were preparing the district for another 500 students.
Yeah, but it seems like the only people that bore that burden are the taxpayers in all of our tax increases. And I just feel personally, I'm not going to speak for anybody else out here, but personally, I think you folks should have done a little better job at managing the budget to absorb some more of those costs so that it wasn't such a big burden.
One
on
thing
the
that was
taxpayers.
left out was when we did that redistribution of the students, that report that came through, that was all done in preparation for the growth. As we add students, where there's room for them by redistricting, that's the word I'm thinking of, redistricting. So they listened to what I said. They did what they can do. And then when we closed Applegarth for 1 year, and everybody at Oak Tree and Applegarth knew that was the story, it was like pulling teeth to get it reopened. And what I said at that point was that if you want it closed, we'll leave it closed. But what are you going to do with, you're going to have 35, 40 kids to a class? So, you know, they've done, I'm only on it 3 years. You've got people on here a hell of a lot longer, and they've done what they can do.
The other thing
Can they make improvements? Perhaps. But they're working their tails off to try to keep expenditures down.
Well, we just like them to keep working at that.
The other thing I think I'd like to mention is that this hasn't been done in the last 2-3 years. We've been doing this for 10 years when we got a committee together to decide we wanted to build a new high school. Didn't go over the first time. We had to go through a second referendum to get that passed. In the past 10 years, we've added 2,800 students to our district. Again, that's more than one high school that you have to add. We had to build Oak Tree. Where are we going to put these kids? And again, you have to have staff. You have to have benefits for the staff. A lot of it is negotiated. Your gas prices have risen over the time. Your food prices have risen over the time.
You keep putting the blame back on us not writing those letters.
No, we're not putting the blame. I'm just trying to
Well, I've
explain.
heard that a lot, okay? But you're the people that are in charge and in control, okay? And you need to make that call to Trenton. You need to voice that opinion. This issue with Linda Greenstein, you're only doing that as a result of everybody shouting that, hey, this 11% tax increase,
I don't think
we
that-
can't
I don't
take.
think- I don't think-
Why is this
Excuse
going
me,
forward
sir?
now, and why wasn't it going forward in 2008 when you first felt the impact?
I think I've been writing letters and going to see the government, people in the government, or senators since 1999. I don't think there's a person on this board or an administrative team who has not tried to contact people to the point, emails, letters, visits. I don't think anybody writes any more letters than Mr. Klein does. So we have been very active.
I've read some of his letters.
We have been very active in
Well,
trying.
it just seems to me that as a result of us coming here, now this proposal to Linda Greenstein is going forward.
No, I don't think that's true.
That's what it seems like to me.
Have you come to meetings in the past where these things have
I've
been
been to some meetings, obviously, I haven't been
Because
to
we
all
have
of them.
budget presentations every year where
I'm
we,
talking about the issue with Linda Greenstein.
well, that's the latest we have.
We've met with Senator Greenstein about a half a dozen times just on our funding issue alone. Probably about another half a dozen times on the Jamesburg matter. We've met with the governor's chief of staff, which is as high as we could go with the governor, Wayne D'Angelo's office, and anybody else who would hear us. And Dr. Hamilton and I have been relentless trying to get more state aid funding for this district, which we deserve.
Just one question.
Yeah, regarding the MECA program, there was an initial $165,000 loan to that proprietary startup fund. This is a new business venture that the district is engaging in. A lot of that $165,000 was fixed assets and improvements to the facility to be able to open up and host such a daycare facility. Enrollment is increasing. We're doing open houses and outreaches as much as we can to increase enrollment. We've opened up enrollment opportunities to take kids from the township, and we anticipate that to grow strongly in the next year.
When will it be a zero budget item then?
That's a good question. The $35,000 is to cover operational costs to maintain a positive fund balance in the fund, so that's $200 so far.
You mean to have a reserve, or you mean for operations?
It's not a
right now?
reserve.
Okay.
It's not a reserve. It's to pay current operational expenses, and we may have to come back for more in the next couple months. But, you know, the whole design of this fund with the budget that Dr. Hamilton prepared and handed out to the board and the public indicated our profit motive and projections for profitability relatively quickly. And we disclaimed right at the onset, like any new business venture, it takes a while to gain momentum and get up to profitability.
But what's your projected date right now for it to meet its expectations, to be a zero budget item? Is there an expectation?
Yes, we do. We anticipate that we will be at about 70% of our projected capacity by February, and then we will have to close that gap in summer because we'll be extending the program to include a summer camp during the summertime. So some of our expenses will go down, but some of the income will come up because it will take less resources to operate the summer program.
The 70%, I'm sorry, the 70% is 70% to break even, or it's 70% of capacity?
70% to break even.
Okay.
Now, with regard to your other remaining questions about the five-year facility plan, the anticipated need for improvements, and what's the district doing to get outside help in that regard. Just off the top of my head to your question, I can recall Jerry Tague and I preparing a grant application to JCP&L to provide lighting replacement. And the entire the entire central office building, JCP&L has come in, put more efficient lighting structures, new bulbs, and the whole outfit of the building, which ultimately saves energy costs, and that was their motivation for doing it. The district didn't have to pay a dime for that. This was something that was in the five-year facility plan. Also, you'll see on page 25 of the business administrator's report from this very meeting, the application that Jerry Tague and I prepared for a safety grant through the insurance fund. We received an award of $19,840, which is being dedicated to swipe systems at the schools to make sure that we don't have anybody in the school building that's unsafe. And one of the biggest items that we had was when we constructed this very school, we applied to the State Economic Development Authority for a Section 15 grant, and we were awarded $15.4 million of grant to offset the construction cost of this school. All of that has been paid except for $3 million on the last outstanding payment, which we were promised by in the next 60 days.
But is it possible?
And
I don't know
I'm sorry,
how
but the time's up now. We're well over 3 minutes.
Just real quick, I don't know how the backpacks came to fruition, and it's not a criticism. I don't know how they came to fruition,
Can I
but
tell you how
perhaps
that happened?
let me just finish. But perhaps you could make that same pitch for the new roof or for the Applegarth boiler. Is all I'm throwing out.
We didn't make a pitch for that. What happened is a friend of mine knows like the general manager up there, and the general manager contacted my friend and said, look, I have these boxes of backpacks. I have called every organization I can think of to come get them and donate them. Nobody's calling me back. Do you know somebody who would like them? He contacted me knowing I was on the board. I contacted Dr. Hamilton. But believe me, if he was offering a roof, we would have been there.
Is it possible to go back and ask them? I mean, that's all I'm throwing out there.
Well, you know, we do have an education foundation, and we do try to do things like that through the foundation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is anyone else from the public?
My name is Bill Hoover. I live in the Clearbrook retirement community, Metuchen Street. Very simple question. I believe the president a moment ago said our total enrollment, maybe over a 10-year period, has gone up something like 2,800 or 2,900 students. On any given year, is the total amount of money that is received constant, the portion that comes from all the property owner taxpayers versus the portion of that that comes from the state? Or has the ratio, let's say it's 10 years ago, maybe the state provided 10% and the taxpayers did 90%. Have those ratios, whatever they are, remained constant, or are the citizens falling behind a bit? In other words, shouldering more of the burden.
Mike, I got the answer.
It may not be a question you know an exact answer to tonight.
I can tell you, generally and conceptually, we're falling behind. The enrollment increases and the increases that are required for appropriations for educating those students that the board president mentioned are not being percentage-wise maintained by state aid.
Right. Thank you.
I'll give you specifics.
Yes.
About an hour ago, someone mentioned they were here 7 years. And at that time, we had 4,298 students. We got $4,400,000 of state aid. Today, we got 6,077 students. That's a difference of 1,779 students, which means it's a 49.4% increase. As Mark said a while ago, as soon as Governor Christie came in, he chopped the 4.4 down to $238,000, a 95% cut. And we've been clawing our way back, and we're up, what now? 2.6 million. So we have grown 42%, and we still are about halfway of where we were 7 years ago.
In a state-related, that brings up a point. I don't know much about the Abbott district. We've only lived here 4 years. But in that same time, when the state share of our total operating budget has dropped a bit,
Not a bit.
have Abbott districts or some other notorious place gone up in percent of state aid, or simply getting more dollars, whereas maybe we're getting squeezed here a little bit more than we think is fair?
Absolutely.
Absolutely what?
Absolutely. We are being squeezed more than fair. And essentially what happens is those districts that are formally referred to as Abbott districts are getting more. And ultimately, even as our quest to secure more funding, as that battle becomes more in our favor, that money is going to come from somewhere. So it's actually going to put school districts against one another. And that's an unfortunate dilemma that we have, but that's going to be our reality.
There's one obvious answer. All the monies for all the schools in the state of New Jersey only come from taxpayers.
Oh, yeah.
How it's allocated and distributed,
That's
other
very
than
true.
some grants,
That's very true.
is going to be variable, and it's unfortunately politicized sometimes. Thank you for your
Thank you.
answers.
Anyone else from the public?
Good evening, John Katurba, 153 Union Valley Road. I've lived in Monroe Township 46 years. Now you know how old I am. I'm a proud graduate of Monroe Township High, class of '84. I'm really proud of this town. I work in town. I work for the utility department, the former MTMUA, for the past 26 years. I'm sitting here listening to Mr. Klein and a couple other people about, the student population expanding. And, working in the utility authority and now the department, when developers would come in, they bought the land, they'd come to the planning board, they had a conforming development. By law, it had to be granted. We've wound up in lawsuits before. We've spent taxpayer money on the lawyers to fight these, and we've lost. But when it comes to the utility, we have a problem with we have to supply it with water, and we have to take their sewer. Sometimes when we get to capacity, we cannot approve it because when they're given final approval at the town, they can be given a subject to final, which means they don't have the total final until you get all those little subject twos approved and passed. They come to us, listen, we need this. We got final over at town hall at the planning. We got to get this approved. We need your subject to. Well, listen, we don't have the water. We don't have the sewer capacity for you. You're going to have to pay for it if you need that subject to passed. What do? They pay for it. And in instances right now, we have a sewer problem where we're at capacity. I had a few developers that come in. They all got together, ponied up the money. They're making the improvements now. Taxpayers aren't paying for it. The developers are. I just can't believe that, you know, with the planning board, and people think it's the planning board and zoning. It's really not. You have to look at your master plan. You got to go back to that. There's a master plan committee that sets the zoning in town. That sets the president. You really want to make an impact, the Board of Ed should get more involved with that master plan. That's the foundation for it all. And I don't know if you guys are involved in that or not, but I think you should and get more of a voice. Now, maybe I'm thinking out of the box because we're in a situation, we're in different times now. There's a lot of, everybody's finding fault with this and finding fault with that. I like to come up with solutions, and maybe they're out of the box. And I think that's what we need right now, some out-of-the-box ideas. Why can't the Board of Ed be one of those subject to approvals?
Absolutely.
Okay? Maybe we can go work together. You got Town Hall, Board of Ed. Let's work together. We're in this together. Again, I love this town. I've been here all my life. My kid goes to this school. I think we have a lot at stake here. So I think we need to look further down. Yeah, you got to trim. You got to trim this budget. I'm a firm believer in that. But looking down the road, right now, there is activity. The real estate market is coming back. I'm seeing it in my office. There's a lot of unimproved properties out there still. Now is the time to get involved with that master plan, maybe make some amendments to prevent it, because once the developers get preliminary tentative, you're locked, you're handcuffed. But I think there needs to be more communication, and I think that you need to get more involved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
But one more thing, you got a lot of students here really upset this week. My son came home and he was kind of down. I said, Chris, what's the matter? He goes, they blocked the video game off the iPods this week. Kudos to the guy that did it. There's a bounty out, though, I heard, for that guy, so thank you.
Okay, anyone else from the public?
I make a motion.
No. Somebody's coming.
Mary Ann Lester, 44 Avenue I. Tonight on your agenda, you approved certain clubs for the middle school, and I just want to know how you can justify an instructional rate of $53.87 for card making, jewelry making, rock band music, scrapbooking, soap making, and nail art. That instructional rate, $53.87
That's a
per hour.
That's a negotiated rate with the association. There are two rates that teachers are eligible for. One is an instructional rate, one is a non-instructional rate. And
Why
the
does it have to be a
content-
teacher then that teaches it?
Beg your pardon?
Why does it have to be a teacher? These are clubs. I don't want to spend $53.87 an hour to teach a kid how to make soap. That's not a well-rounded student for college. Maybe the debate club, but not soap making. Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else from the public?
That's a zinger.
Okay, seeing no one, I'm going to close public forum. Ms. Antelis?
Yeah,
did you want-
I just, again, want to talk about a board member sitting on the planning board. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion that the board president send a letter to the mayor requesting that a seat be open for a board member.
Second. Second.
Okay, any comments or questions?
And what I'd also like to add to that.
Are you,
No, you got
yeah, Amy and Lou.
Oh.
Is that, you want to amend the motion?
Well, even if we do another motion, we have to also get, and I know the mayor and Council President Tambora listened to the meeting, we have to get one of their people on our board, if not on the board, but at least to be here as a liaison,
Liaison.
to hear what's going on.
They can't be on this because there's a conflict of interest.
No, I'm not saying, but can't they be here as a liaison?
No,
See what goes
I
on.
think that's their,
Okay,
it would be.
but I'll go with,
okay.
I'll second Amy's.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion is passed. I will do that. Anything else from, no?
I have to go home.
Okay, our next scheduled Public Board of Education meeting will be Wednesday, November 14th, 2012, 7 o'clock PM at the high school. A motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Kaufman and Mr. Ira? Mr. Ira?
No,
Mr. Ira? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The meeting is adjourned.